When we went to Cedarburg, phenomenal city to work with. Might be the best. We've worked with some really good ones. But they just had that attitude, like, okay, let's see what you have and let's come together. And we ended up putting in infrastructure and things that benefited the city for the future. But we did it in a way that was good for all. Good for us too, but really good for the city. And then, of course, other parcels of land were able to go as a result of our collaborative work. That's a great example of how the most important element, I think, where it gets problematic is where there's contention and there's a feeling like the developer maybe is trying to get away with something.
The NIMBY syndrome, if you will, not
it might
my
be,
backyard.
Yeah. Right.
Hello, my name is Paul Seitz. I'm a business development consultant at R&R Insurance Services in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Thank you for being with us today. This is another edition of Land Development Focus. We explore the approval process, the numerous government entities involved in the land development process. To do this, we are meeting with various Wisconsin-based land developers to explore the issues and to learn more about this fascinating business called land development. With us today is John Wahlen, the owner of Cornerstone Development. Thanks for being with us, John.
Oh, thanks, Paul. It's nice to be here.
John, you started Cornerstone Development in approximately 2009.
Right.
I believe at the time you came to the Milwaukee area and you were partners with a larger national land development company. Tell us about those early years.
Well, it was exciting because I was coming back home to the Milwaukee area where I grew up, and it was great to be back by family, but also a new business endeavor. So yes, I had a partner who had an engineering background, which was very helpful, and another gentleman who had the building knowledge because he had been building in the Chicago area. And then here am I. Sales and marketing had been my forte for many, many years. And we wanted to try this new venture. So we started with the first neighborhood in Menominee Falls, and it went really well. We were building ranch-style condominiums at a really nice location in Menominee Falls. To this day, it's still our largest neighborhood, 132 condominium homes with a clubhouse and a pool. And that really launched us. That was in 2005. But then suddenly no one would lend, as we all kind of remember the 2008, 2009 years.
The downturn.
Exactly. And my business partner decided to go back to the engineering that he knew, which was he's in the mining industry. And I decided to stick it out and started Cornerstone in 2009 and got lucky. Found a bank that would lend for our next community, and off we went.
That would have been a rough time to start any building company in Wisconsin. Because
it was.
08, 09, this industry locally and nationally declined dramatically in the span of 6 months. I've never seen anything like it.
No, and when I look back, I learned so much, Paul. I mean, it was really good for me, right? With every opportunity can come a gift. And we were very fortunate that our focus was on the demographics to build communities that focus on a variety of things. It was really kind of placemaking. So you could create a neighborhood where there's walkability, where we have amenities, and they were ranch-style homes. So we quickly became known as the builder that works with the empty nesters, the demographics where people want to downsize, right? And we did the Glen of Brookfield as our second neighborhood. And it was exciting because there were still buyers. Regardless of the economic factors at play, there are times when there are people just in need. They don't want or they can't handle the maintenance anymore, on the exterior elements of their home. So the condominium was perfect for them. And we had a great location in Brookfield, right behind Champs, right at Moreland and 94. And it gave us that window where we could still do well because of the demand for the need.
John, to the best of my knowledge, you are the only developer focused solely on condominium. I do appreciate you've had a couple developments that are single-family formatted, but under the condominium idea.
That's right. That's right.
And, you know, to be so successful in something that a lot of other developers have dabbled with, if I can use that term, it must be that combination of lifestyle amenities, location, which for any successful real estate company is critical.
True.
And so you took that format, very successful in the beginning. How many communities to date do you
We're at 19.
19.
And we have 6 currently that are at one stage or another of either finishing up or just getting rolling.
I think that puts you close to 1,000 units of condominium. That
Right.
is success by any measure.
Well, thank you. And you know what we've done, Paul, because it works so well in Menominee Falls and Brookfield, we then knew our focus should be on suburban Milwaukee, where these homes, which have a little bit of spread, right? You have to have some land to do it. And you want to turn that land into that community, that neighborhood feel versus high rises, right? Many people know condominiums as stacked. And that's not what we do. We focus on the actual neighborhood.
I believe it's 2 and 4 family units in all of these, except for the couple that were single family.
Right.
Right. I think you're absolutely correct that most people think of condominiums as an apartment building, high rise.
Right.
And, you know, your communities are certainly not that.
Well, thanks. We do try to show that people can downsize. They might share a wall, but they really won't know it. You're not going to hear your neighbors. You're going to have your private corner to the building. You have a separate entry, an attached garage. Those are the elements that are important to people as they are moving into that stage of life where they're empty nesting.
I believe every development has a clubhouse and a pool associated with it. That certainly seems to be the trend, not only in metropolitan Milwaukee. I've seen it around the country, some in Appleton.
Right.
Lake Geneva has some of these developments.
That's right.
And
we like doing that, Paul, because we think you then do create that place. So what I'd like to tell our buyers and then subsequently our owners, you know, the clubhouse gives you a chance to re-upsize temporarily when you need to. You don't have a family event or there's a big gathering that's accomplished because it's yours. You know, you own it in association with everyone else. And it also gives neighbors a chance to get together. So social committees kick in, and there are elements that just make it a little bit more of a special place where people are proud to move in. And I think that's critical.
There's natural reasons for those unit owners to bond.
That's right.
It brings people together.
Right.
Very interesting. You know, the development process itself, John, it continues to become more complex each year.
It seems to.
Meaning it adds time, it adds cost. What, in your opinion, you know, what is the most problematic area that you may deal with? You know, I understand getting approvals from local units of government is usually, it's a different format depending on which municipality you go into.
That's correct. And you know what? I think at a high level, the real key is, does the municipality, and in this case, does the developer, come in with a collaborative attitude? If you have a collaborative attitude, it's going to work on both sides. That's the approach we always take. When we have a parcel of land and contract, right now we have 2, we reach out to neighbors. We reach out to the municipality. And we try to just lay cards on the table that's transparent to say, what do you need? Here's what we're hearing. Here's what we're thinking based on the demographics for this area. What do you need? And what do you see as most appropriate here for this land? Because if you then approach it in that manner with an open mind, you set the stage that says, we're going to work together. When we went to Cedarburg, phenomenal city to work with. Might be the best. We've worked with some really good ones. But they just had that attitude, like, okay, let's see what you have, and let's come together. And we ended up putting in infrastructure and things that benefited the city for the future. But we did it in a way that was good for all. Good for us too, but really good for the city. And then, of course, other parcels of land were able to go as a result of our collaborative work. That's a great example of how the most important element, I think, where it gets problematic is where there's contention and there's a feeling like the developer maybe is trying to get away with something.
The NIMBY syndrome, if you will, not
It might
my
be,
backyard.
yeah. Right.
You know, the Metropolitan Builders Association has their Construction Advisory Council, and they met last week.
Yeah, they're good.
You know, they were talking about this very topic that developers today, sophisticated developers, have learned you need to communicate to the neighbors immediately. You know, when before you're under, maybe when you're under contract, that open communication will diffuse to some extent this automatic reaction that neighbors may have to a new development.
Exactly. And it can quell rumors that aren't true. And again, it's that transparency that I think in life is really important. By telling people and seeking out their opinion, here's what we're planning on doing, you just lay your cards out. Some might consider that risky. I consider it a smart business move because if it's really not going to work for that parcel of land and for the neighbors around you, then you shouldn't do it. Now, it's never happened to us because we've worked in the walking paths, the cul-de-sacs, the things that were of concern to those neighbors. There are oftentimes ways you can mitigate that, address them, and then everyone's happy.
Sounds fascinating.
Well, it's a challenge, but I like that, right? Again, gifts come from opportunities and challenges.
John, as I think you're aware, there's an effort underway by the Wisconsin Builders Association to legislate more of a uniform process when it comes to the engineering and the inspection pieces. And what they would tell you is that, you know, today the municipality will have an engineer, the developer will have an engineer, and there's a lot of duplication and a lot of increased costs. And they're trying to legislate, the analogy I make, in the 1980s, every municipality had its own building code. And in this state, we adopted then finally a uniform 1 and 2 family building code that covers the entire state of Wisconsin. And municipalities can only deviate from it in very minor ways. It enabled builders to know what to expect, whether they were in Madison, Milwaukee, wherever. And today, now they're going to try to legislate a logical process when it comes to the engineering and the inspection processes, and really lower costs, going back to affordable housing, I think. Do you see benefits in that? Do you see how that could work?
I do. And let me say, the Metropolitan Builders Association in the greater Milwaukee area is phenomenal. I mean, they're renowned around the U.S. for being an organization that really brings builders together for the good of the future. I mean, they look at issues like this to help advance, and not just from a builder perspective, but how can things be done better? And isn't that what we should all be asking, even of ourselves? Yeah. So then you expand that up to the state level, and the same thing's working. And I think what you just described is an extension of the philosophy that we've maintained. That is, let's get together, talk about the best practices from a state perspective. How can we better manage this? I will tell you, if something, and so I'm all for it, and if this had been in place a few years back, perhaps we would have avoided, working with a municipality on the south side of town. They have consultant engineers on the outside, and the consultant engineers, their mantra is, you're going to move it around the building to make a buck, and the elements of cost that were added to it were hard to even imagine going into it. For example, $450,000 is what they put in to the letter of credit that we had to put up just for inspections of the site. Now, those inspections are $89 an hour. and it's $450,000, but it becomes $540 because you have to multiply it for a letter of credit by 1.2. Now, if that's a function of what they're working on in Madison, I'm all for it. Let's get it so that that's stabilized, and it's not as whimsically applied, so that everyone understands what's fair, reasonable, and appropriate going forward.
You know, there's so much discussion in Madison, in the building community, about affordability. According to the Badger Institute's a nonprofit that examines the very issues we're discussing. And for the first time ever in the state of Wisconsin, the new homes have an average over $500,000 in this state. And from the realtors, they would tell you that the average home price now, meaning existing and new, is about $310,000. You know, to imagine an environment where the average new home's over $500,000, I didn't think we'd ever be there.
I didn't either.
And that's why some of these initiatives are getting some traction. We as a community, as a state, as an industry, we need to address it, and it's a difficult issue.
It is one, and levels where there are costs applied that really are unnecessary at any build section, right? At any point in the process, if we can pull those out, I'm all for it, because the consumers win, the state wins, and we're all better for it. And yet right now, if you want to build correctly and you want to use the right materials and then you follow all of the elements in place, to do it right, you're ending up at about $500,000.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Back to Cornerstone.
Okay.
So you, one of your newer developments is the Grove at River Hills.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. I mean, River Hills, that's a good name, I guess, and I didn't think that River Hills would have a condominium project, but they do now.
Okay, you just brought forth another shining example of when a municipality is collaborative. So the village of River Hills had a parcel of land that they owned, and they wanted the best use on it. And so they put an RFP out, request for proposal, to see who might come in with ideas for residential on this land. We were one of them. We were one of 7 submissions, and they chose us. And from there forward, working with the board, working with engineering there, working with the administration of the village, again, together planning this out so that the 51 homes are laid out beautifully. We have a big clubhouse, a pool, a couple pickleball courts, right? Bocce court, just a beautiful amenities.
Pickleball and all.
Exactly. And with the demographics, it's a home run.
John, tell us, you've assembled a team over the years. I know some of your team. Tell us how you go about that and what elements are in that team.
Well, we've set up an atmosphere here, so we follow our core purpose, which is positively impact the lives of those around us, period, every day, period. And then we have 4 core values that track along that. And it's important when we look for teammates and when we have a need. So, for example, right now we're looking for architect, designer. They've got to shine to show that is what they'll embrace going forward. Because I think that's what helps make us all collectively better, to remember that we're trying to change the world in the way we can, one municipality, one buyer, one family at a time. Well, I like our team. We have 26 people, and they do embrace the philosophy, so that as folks, come in, they get it. They get that we do care, and we're going to take every step we can to try and help change their lifestyle and give them a beautiful place to live. And I think that's the biggest thing I look for, Paul, is that positive energy, obviously smarts and experience, but trying to bring people in that can advance us, but yet with the core purpose and values in mind.
John, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Your insights. Found it very interesting. Thank you for being with us today.